and maybe just kind of how long we've been on the board, just a little bit, and then let's kind of roll into it. And you know, the dynamic is always kind of formal to be in this like really far away from Jane and Quinn, but be great to just, I think the format I'm hoping for this meeting, especially as we get into the kind of clean mobility stuff, would be to really just have more of a brainstorm, kind of figure out where we want to go on that. So that's the intent once we get into that kind of meat of the meeting. So I'm Hannah Hunt Wander. I am the chair of the environmental board and professionally involved in planning and architecture, and been in, whoa, it's coming, and have been a part of the board for about 3 years.
Me next. So,
And if you don't mind just putting the red, we'll just get people if anybody's listening. Thank you.
So I'm Scott Wenning, the town staff liaison to the environmental board. So I work for the town of Carbondale as the utility director, and that kind of intersects with the environmental board and the fact that like I push on things like water conservation, and all of our wastewater treatment is kind of directly related to environmental stewardship and whatnot. And we also work on a couple renewable energy projects within the utility department. So, and river restoration projects even. So intersect with the environmental board in a lot of ways, which is why I'm the liaison.
I'm Kay McDonald. I am officially the planning technician for the town of Carbondale, but I'm also the interim boards and commissions clerk for 2 years running. I'm actually into my 5th year as the boards and commissions clerk. And then previous to my tenure here at the town, I was an archaeologist for 40 years.
Hi, I'm Chris Hassig. I'm the liaison between the board of trustees and the environmental board. And I've been on the board of trustees since 2022. And so that was when I started being the liaison to this board.
And I've been on the environmental board about 3 years, and I'm part of a subcommittee called the
Quinn Donnelly. I'm been on the board about 3 years, and professionally I do river engineering for a consulting firm here in town.
My name is Fred Malo, and I guess I've been on the board for about 3 years now. And I am also a volunteer for 350 Waring Fork, a local climate remediation organization.
I'm Kevin Hanian. I just joined the board earlier this year, so probably about 3 months ago or so. So learning a lot for sure.
I'm Oliver. I'm a current senior at Roaring Fork High School, and I was alluded to the opportunity to be a youth representative on this board, and I'm very interested to see what it's like. So.
Great. Well, thanks for being here.
Skagen, Skagen.
Yeah, and Oliver, as we go through this, feel free to kind of jump in and ask questions and just participate. So glad you're here. So let's go through the consent agenda. Did folks get a chance to take a look at the minutes from last month? Any comments?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes from August 2024.
Second.
Second. Great. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Awesome. Excellent. Kate, thanks as always for for the minutes. I would like to move to Chris. Be great to just get an update from the Board of Trustees and helpful too to just kind of frame it in terms of how, aspects from an update that the e-board could weigh in on or areas where you see opportunity in the kind of broader update. So.
I don't know if I have a whole lot new to report. We had a long discussion about inclusionary zoning, which is sort of more affordable housing and how much developers have to build affordable housing. Right now, it's 20% of units have to be affordable. So beginning at 5 units, you have to designate one as an affordable unit. And we've been toying around with dropping that down to 4 units and making it a 25% requirement. I think that the P&Z came back to us with a proposal to make the first unit at 4 units, you would have to just make one of them a resident occupied unit. And then beyond that, you'd start doing a sort of a graduated scale essentially or whatever. But that's not really environmentally directly related, but that's one thing we're working on. We're getting close, hopefully, to a guaranteed maximum price on the pool. I don't think there's any threat at this point of the environmental objectives of that project being abandoned. We're still aiming for essentially a all electric near net zero setup. There are some final things to be worked out in terms of extras and such that may or may not make it into the final budget. So we're hoping that we'll get to a final 100% price on that. We've been waiting on it for a couple months now, beyond what we expected, but tricky business, these infrastructure projects. It's the run up to the budget process. We already talked about that last meeting pretty heavily. We have a new finance director. What is our new finance director's name? Greg, yeah. So he's gonna be learning right as he gets into, he knows a lot. It seems like he's got plenty of experience, but he's gonna be jumping right into the heat of the budget season. So hopefully we'll have some patience with him, and I think it'll be great. And the only other thing of note I would say is I think we pretty much finished up that pedestrian crosswalk project at Cowan Drive. And that went exceedingly well, it seems like, in terms of schedule. So that hopefully bodes well to doing more of those in future years. We did that in-house. The Public Works Department did it all themselves pretty much. So that was a huge lift for them, and it's not something they can do all the time for sure, but maybe once a year. So we might get one of those a year. We can also bid them out, but those have tended to come back at really expensive rates. So that's sort of where we are. Otherwise, I think that's about all. I don't know if there's a whole lot of new environmental stuff that I can think of otherwise that we're looking at.
Maybe just that little geothermal approval. that you
Oh,
guys-
yes, forgot about that. Yes. Oh. Yeah, I was trying to look up the agenda to see if I could, what I forgot. Yes, that's the most exciting and interesting thing probably environmentally that's going on right now is this geothermal net zero energy district that would be centered around the 3rd Street Center, and ideally include the townhomes all along 2nd Street that back up to the 3rd Street Center, as well as the faculty housing for the school district there, and the Bridges High School and the library, as well as the 3rd Street Center. And that is an underwater ground loop, basically. So it's not going for high temperature geothermal, but ambient temperature geothermal, which then feeds into heat pumps, which work a lot much more efficient at that, with that setup, basically. So, but they are, the trickiest question around it is about the maintenance and running of that system once it gets built. And I know I think they've been talking to Scott a fair amount, because the trickiest thing about it is that the town is split between Excel service territory and Holy Cross Energy service territory by the railroad tracks, essentially. And so if we were in Holy Cross territory, it would probably be a simpler conception to maybe have them own and run the whole system. But since we're in Excel Energy's territory, they only do this in territory where they serve gas. So I don't think want to have anything to do with it. So basically it becomes up to the Third Street Center and the town and the CLEER to kind of figure out how we're going to run and take on the sort of liability of owning it, essentially. And it is sort of similar to some of the water, it's underground pipes. So it is potentially something we could take on. So that'll be a big question, is like, what is the extent of that responsibility, and can we manage that? But at this point, it's still just in the the grant. We signed off on a letter saying we support the project and will support the project going forward. But we're up against, I think, 10 other towns in the country for this sort of rural end of the grant process. I'm not sure if it's 10 or what, but so they've like narrowed it to these 10, I guess, or something. And then we have to get it to the top, what is it, 3 or something to get funded. So we'll see. We may not get it at all, in which case we'll be probably spinning our wheels for a while. If we do get it, then it'll be a really quick, like, let's get going thing. So does that cover it? Maybe you want to add anything, Scott?
I'm sure I'm forgetting something too, but I'll go with it.
I think that's, yeah, I'm sure there's some other stuff going on that I'm not remembering, but yeah.
I have a few questions, but also if anybody, I'll open it up if anybody else has questions for Chris or Scott. Fred.
I don't know if this has an environmental impact, but it will have an impact on traffic. Was there any of this kerfuffle over that restaurant on 133 across from Dolores? Was that discussed at all?
That's still in the P and Z as far as I understand it. It hasn't come to us, so I can't comment on it yet. It's going to be a public process, so I can't talk about it basically before we get to the actual meeting. So do you want to add something, Kay?
Oh, it'll probably be at the 24th.
Okay. Yeah.
Trustee meeting. Okay.
But yeah, you come to that meeting, I guess, or if you want to weigh in on it, or look at the agenda ahead of time and send us an email if you want to weigh in on it. So.
Chris, I'm just curious about, from the pool standpoint on the GMP, I know there's been some items that have been in the kind of add alternate category. And I guess I'm just curious what the timing is for, the e-board has somewhat weighed in on that, but I'm just interested as that moves forward, what are the opportunities to, know more about kind of how that decision-making is going from the e-board, be informed, and then also potentially recommend if we feel it's appropriate.
I don't know if it's entirely clear to me exactly how it works, but it's kind of a ping pong match between the contractor and the art design team, the owner's rep, the rec department, and other town planning departments and stuff like that, in terms of like, okay, what do we want here? What does it cost? And then trying to reverse engineer that, I guess, and figure out, okay, if we don't want that, then how much is it going to cost? So I think if I remember, I'm not certain of this, but I think where we left it, there's a large canopy structure and the hot tub spa element that are the two main sort of add alternate line items. And so those two I think are still being sort of separated from the rest of the budget to some degree. So the canopy's main is an expensive part of the project, but its main advantage environmentally is where we can mount solar panels. So if it's not built, at least at first, it means you get many fewer solar panels on the project, and it's not technically net zero until the grid is net zero. Or if it's got more solar on it, then it's more directly net zero. But I don't think under any circumstance you're building enough solar to actually on site to do
Fully
all of the
offset.
heating
Mhm.
job. The spa is like a bigger, it's not just a hot tub, it's like a whole little pool. And that's almost a $500,000 item itself. And yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see where that lands also. That has some big time support from the Parks and Rec board and some trustees. I've been personally lobbying for it to be removed first if we have to go on, if we have to cut something. But I'm just one of 7, so I don't know how that would go ultimately. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a moment of reckoning of either they figured out how to get it down to the price, $11.6 million that we had sort of set as our price, or whether there's still further things that we need to try to take out, or whether we need to give it more money. So I'm not sure where the e-boards, I think your voice has been heard, and I think the trustees are pretty adamant that the environmental, we don't walk back on the environmental aspects of it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I don't know, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure where exactly to insert yourself. The process has been so delayed and changing that it's hard for me to be
Sure.
certain when that I don't trust any of the deadlines anymore, basically, around this project. So
Well, keep us in the loop.
yeah, the construction crew's ahead of schedule. It's just the whole actual guaranteed price has not been landed on. So
I guess they're digging the hole for the pool.
yeah, they're working on it. It's not like, yeah. And I'm sort of glad that we did approve it to going forward with it, despite not having the guaranteed price, because they have been able to get a lot done in this fall timeframe,
Yeah.
even though we don't know exactly. So, and being on schedule is helpful for our budget too. So. Sorry, I don't have a more satisfactory answer to that.
Thanks, Chris. Scott, anything else from kind of town staff standpoint or your world? And also, thank you so much for taking us on the tour of the Nettle Creek.
No, I saw
Viaduct.
you have that on the
That was
agenda, so.
awesome. Yeah, we can have a
We can recap
reflection
there.
then, but yeah, thanks again for that. That was awesome.
No, it was my pleasure. It was enjoyable. I don't have too much else. I think Chris hit on pretty much all of the big picture stuff throughout town that I know about. From a utility standpoint, it's kind of been the same thing. Got a lot of irons in the fire. I think things that are coming together that will be interesting down the road, but not too much to report yet. We're working on our meter pilot study. We have 3 of 4 vendors installed. We're going to do 1 more because we were going to test 3 vendors. One of the vendors they didn't know if they were going to be supporting Colorado anymore. It got ugly, so we're going to add 1 more. So that part's a little bit delayed, but we're still going in the right direction. Our early indications are that with new meters, we are capturing more water. So essentially, these meters all measure water at lower flow rates. So when somebody goes and flicks on a sink for just a few seconds or whatever, we used to miss all that low flow, and now we're recording it. So like my water bill went up 30% because I put a meter on myself.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're not measuring 30% of our water is concerning from a utility operator perspective. So I think there'll be a lot of really interesting information to come from that. Once we get that pilot study done, we'll make a decision on which one we're gonna select. Likely we'll go seeking out grants. There's a lot of grants out there to support that installation. Then we'll work on installing these smart water meters throughout town. And then once we have that data, then we can work on a more water conservation rate structure. So this, we'll call that a 5-year plan. It'll get there though. So that's interesting. Let's circle back to hydro project. I can answer any other questions that come up there. That's still an iron in the fire. And at the wastewater plant, we are, just to update, we haven't talked about this one in a while. We are still doing that large building project, building repair project, as it were. If you recall, last year, we replaced a bunch of the HVAC units. There's some concern that essentially by replacing those units, we are using more energy. However, now the building won't fall down. So you have to, make that trade-off. So that project's going well. We are repairing the building. The HVAC continues to work great. And we think we have a value engineered solution to save some money, which means hopefully by the end of next year, I'm going to push towards a blower upgrade, which will then reduce our power consumption probably a significant amount. So there's I think some good news on the horizon on that one. So, and it all relates. It's all part of the same project. So yeah, that's what's new in my world. Cool. Any questions?
I know we talked about retrofitting this building and potentially the gym. And there was a contractor selected for that. Where was that process at?
Retrofitting for electrification.
Yeah.
That was out to bid, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know what the status of it is though.
I was just curious.
I know we won the big grant for it in the pool, so.
Thanks, Scott.
I will look into that one and report back to you next month. Apologies that I don't know.
Cool. Well, thanks, Scott. That's great. And it sounds like, hi, Morgan. Thanks for joining us virtually. Lauren from CLEER, who's normally here and does an update, sounds like she's not able to be here. I know that in her email, what did she say? Their budget discussion with the town happens October 15th, maybe. I think if there's anything that we want to communicate at our next meeting or kind of get the recap from them in terms of where they are, let's plan to do that next meeting. But is there any kind of questions or any like priority items for CLEER that we want to relay back to Lauren in the meantime?
It'd be nice to, I know last year I felt like they shared a draft of the budget before they went to the town. And that kind of helped us kind of get our brain wrapped around
Yeah.
what their scope is. And if they could do that again, that'd be sweet.
I will ask.
And I'm sure Lauren would speak much better than I ever can about what's going on with geothermal, but we have had just for some big picture, staff have had a lot of communication and coordination with CLEER about the geothermal project. There's a lot of questions to be answered. So there's, I think, really just a ton of work to be done to try to answer those questions. But in my opinion, their path for how we get to the grant application, the letter that the board provided, the letter of support the board provided, and then into their budget discussions all looks really appropriate, like they're moving forward. I think they're just working really diligently on getting the grant application in and working through that process. So that was my last communication with them, just as a brief update.
Is that grant, is that a federal grant? Is that also a DOE grant?
DOE,
Okay.
90% DOE.
Uh-huh.
And then I think 90% DOE, but then they have, I think 3 or 4 other grants
Department of Energy. Yeah.
to try to all compile that with a match from town to eventually get to a total budget.
Got it.
Scott, is that the same grant that would allow us to hire what they call a climate lead on a 3-year plant?
I couldn't
grant?
speak to that. I don't know if that's part of the.
I've been
the
hearing
same-
about that, yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that DOE grant, I guess, this is speculation, but I speculate that it's specific to the geothermal project. If they needed to hire somebody to support them in a climate lead position, I'm sure that that's supported, but
And DOE is where I'm hearing it from, as part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the minutes from last meeting because I know Lauren did speak to the different kind of costs, but I don't remember specifically what personnel I don't think we got that specific. Great. Well, yeah, I'll circle back with Lauren. Good note on that. Kind of update portion, just quickly on the Bee Friendly side, we had one other grant application come through that is for 1,000 square feet that we are intending to award. I will have to do the full grant kind of process for 2024 closes this fall and mid-October. So at the next meeting, we can kind of give an update of where that is. And it would be great to have a kind of e-board conversation about that, just in terms of kind of lessons learned, evaluation, next steps, thinking about that moving forward to next year, what other grant opportunities are out there. I know that CLEER has some, they have been tapped into the work that's happening in Glenwood and also in Silt that have turf replacement programs. And it sounds like there's potentially an opportunity to apply for a turf replacement that would be Garfield County wide, which would be potentially a good opportunity. So we are trying to kind of close out this cycle within Carbondale, and then we'll take a look at that moving forward. And Be Friendly, what else? We are working on a fundraiser. We're planning to be at Potato Day and do some kind of Be Friendly fundraiser activities then. And always getting in the garden and weeding and meeting and doing different stuff. So there's a lot of activity. But that's kind of the main update is the turf replacement program kind of wrapping up.
did you still want me to keep budget in the 2025 budget to support? We think we'll still find a grant match.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think that will either be something that's a CWCB, Colorado Water Conservation Board, that's doing that at the municipal level, like what we did this last year, or it may be something where that is a match at a larger level that contributes to like a county-wide grant, for example. But yeah, that was, what did we say, 8,000, I think?
Yeah, I think we said we would either just continue with what it was or
think it was-
see
it was
where the
8,000,
match,
so-
but somewhere in that 5 to 8
Yeah.
is fine.
Yeah,
And I know the Colorado River District, which is based out in Glenwood, sometimes they have a grant for water conservation activities.
that's a good note. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good note. Yeah. So, with that, my intent for these next ones, kind of action items, is to, let's just kind of move through these, but it'd be great to just have everybody chime in. And I know that because CLEER wasn't here and we've got a little bit more time, if we want to, I was thinking that once we get to it, we were gonna go through some of the items that we prioritized and just kind of like dig into that a little bit further. If we get, I had clean mobility, but if we want to jump into something else also, let's just feel free to do that. But first off, micro hydro tour. It was great. Anybody, what do people think? Any feedback or thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, Scott, I thought it was really entertaining and interesting just to kind of see where our water comes from and then everything. So I really appreciate you taking us up there and Jonathan too.
Totally.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, it's pretty special. I think we have a really unique and special water delivery system to town, and hydro is just sort of a icing on the cake.
Yeah, Oliver, last week, Scott, we've been talking about this for a long time, seeing the micro hydro project, which is part of in Nettle Creek, kind of just a tee off of the existing water distribution system. And there's this kind of small hydroelectric plant there that's still like in the works. But it was cool to see. So we all went up there and saw the project, and it was great. It's nice to get out of this like meeting space and do some other stuff.
Have something else to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. Great. Well, I wanted to then, any other thoughts on micro hydro? Chris was there. Thanks
It
for
was
coming,
great.
Chris.
I really enjoyed
Yeah.
seeing it all. Yeah.
We should do some more,
Yeah.
more field trips.
You had the paper up there too? Raleigh
Yeah.
said they finally got that
I'm not
part.
sure if Raleigh talked to anybody here, but it was curious timing that suddenly Kevin's like, hey, we're gonna take Sopra Sun up to the hydro project too. And I was like, okay, let's
Oh,
go.
really?
Yeah.
Is that coming in the sun this week?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what
Huh.
his plans are.
Funny, yeah.
And then they brought up, God, what was Lynn something or other? He used to work for the paper. Lynn
Burton.
Burton, that's
Yeah.
it. So Lynn came with us, and then I'm not on Facebook, but my wife is, and she's like, did you take somebody up to Nettle Creek? She's like, someone's posting on Facebook with like pictures of the Nettle Creek plant. And I looked what he wrote and I was like, that's not what we talked about at all. I was like, you missed that one, but whatever. It was relatively harmless.
Funny.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe there'll be something in the paper coming in.
Nice.
You guys got the dime tour, he got the nickel tour.
Okay, a note about, this is Morgan, this one's kind of for you. Last month we talked about, and could be a part of a broader conversation, but last month we talked about thinking about doing some kind of a public service announcement happening this fall. And I wanted to circle back with you, Morgan, to see if you had thoughts on that, or we had decided last month that we wanted to kind of aim to do something, whether that's in the Sopra Sun or otherwise, but just a discussion if that's something that we want to try to do.
I'm happy to do whatever the group wants to do. I think from my vague remembering, I thought we were all gonna think about a topic that we wanted to discuss, or whether we wanted it to be a general e-board, like what things we're working on. Does anyone have an opinion on that? Example for new folks that are here, like last year we did something about fall leaves and how, they're actually good for your lawn. We've done one about no idling. That wasn't the fall one from last year, but those were like specific topics. I'm trying to think of some other ones that we potentially, because I don't have that document pulled up.
Yeah, and I guess just part of the question too is, and Sarah Jane and I were kind of talking about this a little bit the other day of, do we want to, certainly could put something out. Do we want to, we've kind of done in the past public service announcements in a little bit of an ad hoc way. And part of that kind of discussion is like, do we want to be a little more strategic about that? And if so, how do we want to go about kind of getting there? I guess is part of the question.
Yeah. It
and I
could
know-
be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead, Morgan.
I think it also could be fun if we were providing not so much like rules, but educational benefits. Like that's one thing that I thought the leave thing was cool, is that it provided people with like some education. but we all do have a wealth of knowledge on different topic matters on the board. So is this like, maybe we talk about putting your seeds out in the fall, or like best times to plant something, or things that you can do to reduce your water usage, or just like different tidbits that might be helpful instead of like putting a no idling. I don't know. That's just like off the cusp, off the top of my head. Very open to other suggestions too. Hannah Hunt and I budgeted aside the money at the beginning of the year, so we do have this money to run an ad.
Is it a quarter page or a half page, or what is it size?
I think we did an eighth of a page, but I think we had another ad. I think we have maybe two more, but we could just do one and do a fourth of a page.
Mhm. I mean, I think, you-
Have you considered a PSA on KDNK?
Oh, sorry. I heard that, but I heard it differently, as we should put something, a PSA in the newspaper about KDNK.
No,
Getting that we should put it on the actual radio station.
yes.
It's been a long Monday. No, but that's something we could use the money for. We could do a quick radio script. Or something. Something I'm starting to do at ACES is nature poems for 30 seconds. So like we can be creative in what we do, like if it's an educational component, or if we, want to talk about an issue that we're passionate about.
Okay, the guy that would help you with that is named Luke Nestler, and it's luke@kdnk.org.
Fred, what are your thoughts about what the PSA would be about?
Right.
What are you thinking about from a content standpoint?
Something having to do with the fall, right?
Could be. I think this is just kind of a thought, like we've done in the past, a kind of leaf and compost reliefs and different kind of strategies. Is that something that we want to do again? Or do we want to, frame it a little bit differently? Or, and maybe it is just for this fall, we just say, hey, yeah, let's just kind of stick with what we're doing, and then maybe think more broadly about how we want to use more of the public education and what our kind of approach is going to be. That's one version. But I'm just kind of giving that opportunity now if we want to think about, what do we think would be appropriate to put out, and what's the medium?
I'll have to think more about it, but right now I'm thinking of appealing to youth. That's you. And how climate change is such an important issue with them, and how to educate them on that, on those things.
Or the reverse in some
Right.
cases. Yeah.
That's the only thing that comes to my mind right now. That's you, Oliver. You're going to.
Yeah, I think appealing to the youth is big. I think especially younger kids, even like elementary school age, having something in schools that they can carry home to their parents, and practicing environmentally friendly things during the fall can turn into like an activity almost, and it's more persuasive to parents. And then also at an older level, we have at the high school, we have monthly community meetings with the whole school. And I think that setting would be a good place to kind of present because there are a lot of high school students I know who would like to make positive change in terms of environment. And so that would be a good setting to do so.
Is the
What are
Energy
these?
Committee still alive?
At the school?
Yeah,
No. It's been dissolved, but we had.
because they've helped me in the past.
Yeah, unfortunately, the interest has gone down, so that club no longer exists, but we had Jane Goodall come to the school last year.
Yeah, that was so
Um,
cool.
Yeah, and she kind of put the seed in the school of starting kind of a chapter of this like Roots and Shoots program that she has that has environmental focus. So that could
Did y'all end up starting Roots and Shoots?
no, it's unfortunately it hasn't come into fruition yet,
Hmm.
but I see it doing so soon, because that presentation that we received from Jane Goodall was very impactful. And I think a lot of us are still kind of, but it's a long process for sure. And there's not too much, unfortunately, there aren't too many students that can put in the time to make that happen, so. Yeah.
We could, I mean, completely stray, if the priority is attracting youth, we could stray and make some sort of flyer and use that, whatever, $200 that it is, to print copies and distribute at these meetings, or to give, to take home for kids to do on the weekend and for parents to read. I think to have something by fall time and to have that into fruition and all agree upon what that subject matter is may take a little longer than fall time, but in theory sounds like a wonderful idea to me.
Jump in, yeah.
I'm just curious, like, and I don't know the answer to this, like like in the valley, like what's the most effective communication tool like these days? I mean, I know we mentioned Soper Sun and KDNK and Glenwood Post, and I mean, are there things we're not thinking about, or?
I think it depends on the target, like on what audience you want. Event wise, like advertising events, all of those are very popular avenues. When I think you want to educate or create more information about a subject matter, it's more like digital newsletters or social media, or if you want to reach different populations, like the Latino population, their biggest reach is on Facebook. So I think it depends on I think maybe the right step or first step in my mind would be to determine what subject matter we want to talk about and what age group we want to reach, and then choose the media choice from there.
Thanks, Morgan. No, that makes sense. Does the town have social media accounts? I know the rec center has one, but.
So Rec Center, Carbondale Arts,
The town does, but the town controls it.
Yeah.
So you would need to submit something to Anna Ramirez
Makes sense.
to get it posted.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a comment. Hannah and I actually, when we were meeting, I think it was on Friday, was it Friday last week? We were talking about the idea of potentially putting together a bit of a communication strategy. My background is also PR and communications, so I've done a lot of community engagement and PR work in the Valley over the years. It's hard to really do much with $200 for a PSA. I mean, honestly, I think my instinct, and Morgan might have other ideas, but I think I would put $200 into something digital on social media. You can't really do a lot in terms of advertising. There's a lot of debate about what is most influential in our local media market, because we have a really big media market for a rural part of Colorado. Editorial is as influential as advertising, but then also the same as the opinion pages. So you kind of have to cover each of those elements of our local media. And then when you've got, 3 radio stations, 3, 4, 5 newspapers, it's really hard to spread across everything to have real impact. So I'd be more than happy to put together a communication strategy that we can implement in 2025 that identifies key audiences. We can do some message development and then maybe have a kind of communication calendar. So we've got a different topic or theme per month, and also look at, what is our strategy? Are we trying to encourage and influence behavior in the community? Are we looking to elevate the profile of the work of the e-board? And also, how can we work with the town of Carbondale communications? So how do we get into the town's newsletter? Lots of different things. But I think that would be a good approach, is to have a bit of a game plan. Yeah, happy to do that though. And maybe partner up with Morgan too, because I know this is something she's been focused on and it's her day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I avoided the comms last time because I was like, I need to get away from it. So I was on a different committee. But I'm happy to sit down with you and work on whatever.
No, and
Can do that.
I do think the communication piece, like a lot of the information's already out there, and it's really just to remind people. And you mentioned kind of what the goals are. I do think a little bit of behavioral influence, and maybe kind of build up that, moral compass for people as far as environmental issues. And then, influencing the town board of trustees board, if the public is behind something, we're gonna get, more official influence that way, though it seems like they're listening to us more often than not lately, but no, it seems like that'd be a great idea to get more organized on that. But I do feel like kind of our, put an ad in the Soper Sun, I don't know how effective that is, and we just kind of do that because we've always done that. And maybe there's other avenues. Me personally, I can't remember the last time I picked up a Soper Sun and read it, but I'm sure there's plenty of people in town that read it, weekly.
Well, I like the talk of more of an overall strategy. I think that's great. In the short term, I think, fall is a good theme in my opinion. And I don't know, maybe there's a potential to team up with I'm not sure what the status of that Rotary project with the electrified leaf or mowers and such. Maybe they want to jump in on an ad together to remind people about that. But I don't know. I think it's a great idea to zoom out for the longer term, but maybe in the short term, just a fall related ad seems fine to me.
I can follow up with the Rotary folks if you want me to.
Sure.
We might be able to throw another $100 into an ad or something, or if you want, but I feel like you could combine it with a couple of garden tips or something, or I don't know, if you had enough space to work with.
Yeah.
Just one other thought on a fall topic. Potentially something discussing the importance of eating locally and in-season foods, and doing a short, simple recipe in there that maybe kids and parents could do together.
That's a fun idea.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Sounds like there's a lot of generative ideas around communication strategy. Well,
My wife is very big into foods
Yeah.
and recipes and stuff, so I could certainly have some input on that.
And you could maybe tie that in with the farmer's market. Are they still doing that, or is it over for the year?
through
Yeah,
the end of
farmer's market
September.
runs, through the 18th, along with a lot of CSAs. So it could be seasonal, or it could be a good message to do when most of the farms are finished with CSAs and farmer's market is ending, like things to really concentrate on when going to the store.
Mhm.
Manna Foods would be a good source too. They spoke, Santantar came to our meeting Saturday, our film showing, and gave the people a lot of good advice about buying locally and improving the situation that way.
Well, this is a great discussion, and maybe it sounds like we agree that trying to do something in the short term, seasonal, fall focused, and maybe that we can see if the Rotary, if they're trying to, maybe we can partner with them. Otherwise, aim for, aim for something kind of pulling from some of the other PSAs, potentially fall related that we've done. Does that seem good, right, to folks? And then aim for a longer, kind of the bigger picture communication strategy. Morgan and Sarah Jane, are you down to think about that broader communication strategy? That would be awesome. And then potentially, let us know when would be the right time, but then we could maybe have a meeting just kind of dedicated to that, thinking through that with you, or thinking through different, kind of ways to move that. That would be huge. I mean, it seems like that's a kind of a niche for the e-board, I think, on that kind of public education communication side. That would be great. So thank you. And Morgan, are you down to help work on putting whatever that ad, kind of seasonal ad is together?
Yeah, after Harvest Party on October 5th, I'm down to make whatever ad we need.
Okay, sounds good. I can help with feed some content, and Quinn, if you want to plug in from the Rotary side, if they want to be a part of that.
And Morgan, I could help if you want me to help with anything, let me know.
Okay, thank you all so much.
But I just agree, thinking of what's the larger effort to reach, to what are the real goals, I think we're due for that kind of a conversation from more of a strategic standpoint. So Sarah Jane, thanks for seeing that and bringing your background to this. That's really helpful.
And I think, we had a long discussion about this at the board of trustees meeting a couple weeks back, around community grant requests and such. And there was some feeling on the board that we should be maybe more holistic in our communications. I mean, Lauren's already made a lot of progress with the newsletter and stuff, and hopefully people can get signed up for that over time. But also ways of supporting our nonprofit media people through maybe more of a combined ad buy or something like that, that might give more airtime / print space to entities like the e-board to put stuff out with the towns on a town strategy. We haven't reached any official agreement on any of that. That's sort of all for next year's in advance of next year's community grant process. But I think there's a feeling that that's a good way to support those entities and also get the town, make sure we're getting all the information out across all the different sectors or whatever.
Cool.
So maybe that'll be something you can tie into next year.
Yeah, for all of us. Okay, that sounds like a good plan. So I wanted to circle back on the VCAPS piece, which was the vulnerability. What does VCAPS stand for? Vulnerabilities.
Climate adaptation. Planning scenarios or something like that.
Yeah, planning scenarios is the last piece. So yeah, and Oliver, just to kind of loop you into this, the town did this VCAPS process, which is kind of looking at climate more from an adaptation and resilience standpoint. Like, what are different structures? What are different processes? What are different kind of preparedness actions that maybe need to be taken in order to adjust to climate change? Here it is. It says, it's the first line of this: vulnerability, consequences, adaptive planning scenarios.
There we go.
Right in front of me. But so this was a process that was done in 2018, and there's interest in the folks who were the consultants who worked on that project are interested to do a kind of update of what that, do an assessment of what's happened basically since 2018. And through certainly relevant in terms of additional challenges that have happened since 2018, like wildfires, like newcomers being in Carbondale, like other aspects that have been kind of needed, town has needed to adapt different processes to. And so the last time I think we talked about this as a group was that from the e-board, we said, well, do we want to do this in conjunction with looking at the climate action plan? And so I circled back with Lauren Gister at the town and also Gwen Garcelon, who did this initial VCAPS proposal. Sounds like the thinking is for Gwen's work, she would be, because she did the initial study, the scope would just be looking at the VCAPS piece. And then if we did a climate action plan, that would be something that would go through a kind of more of a formal RFP process to kind of take a look at the climate action plan kind of more broadly. So we're kind of, this is the proposal that was attached to this is still Gwen's proposal to do an update to where we are from the VCAPS process. And it's kind of an informal proposal in terms of, because she has familiarity with the previous work of trying to do some staff meetings and kind of focus groups to determine what's moved forward and what priorities would come, what priorities might still want to, should be kind of the focus of the VCAPS moving forward. So I wanted to just kind of bring this back to us because I have a few thoughts about this. One, I think that it would be, and maybe we could identify a small team of people to kind of look through this proposal and potentially, it'd be helpful, I think, for this to tighten up potentially a little bit to be aligned with some of the goals that we're trying to meet. And just so it's really clear what we're getting, what the town would be getting out of this VCAPS update and VCAPS process. So I think that's one, is just kind of work on the proposal itself. But then I think another piece is just from the e-board standpoint, we kind of identify that we think that this is valuable, but maybe a broader discussion of just beyond, is there anything kind of beyond prioritizing new kind of VCAPS actions moving forward? I guess maybe I'm not phrasing that right. Like, what's kind of the basis that we want to get out of this? Maybe that would be a helpful discussion. And then if a smaller group of us look through this proposal to make some adjustments, that would be helpful kind of feedback to infuse into the kind of feedback that goes to Gwen. And Quinn, does that make sense?
Yeah, it
I know
does.
we've
No, I mean, I
kind of
think it's-
talked about this before, but
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I think it would be good to maybe tweak the scope of work a little bit. And then I guess we send it back to Gwen and she kind of gives us an updated cost for that and
yeah,
kind of go from there.
yeah.
I'd be interested in helping out with that
Okay,
process. I write lots of scopes of work, so.
that would be great. That'd be great. From a standpoint of like, do we feel like this is worthwhile? What do we want to get out of this? What do people have thoughts on that?
No, I do think it's worthwhile because it's, you read through this and through the climate action plan and there's like these huge lists of things. And I don't think, folks have really not looked at it in a long time. And a lot of what we're trying to do now is already listed in one of those two documents. And I think identifying that and then, like you said, trying to prioritize those and chip into that stuff as much as possible. The prioritization process will be interesting. I assume the Board of Trustees needs to be involved in that, but no, but I think it's
Cool.
valuable.
Anybody? Thumbs up from Fred. Okay, well, maybe Quinn, maybe you and I can kind of talk offline and work on trying to get some good feedback back to Gwen, but keep trying to move this forward.
Last thing, Hannah, so will this be in our 2025 budget? Like basically E-board would pay for this, or is that?
We said that we put in kind of 2,000 to 2,500. I think there's still some decision making of
Okay.
if that's all covered by the e-board or not. But ideally, ideally there would be the majority of this work, or, you know, ideally all of it would be covered by the e-board, but that's, you know, we still have discretion in terms of making sure that that fits what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
I'd be happy to support Quinn in that effort too. If
that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great, Kevin. Thanks. So yeah, I wanted to just talk through the clean mobility, and I pulled up kind of a few different things that I thought it might be helpful for us to just kind of use this time to think about what we said in terms of clean mobility, what we wanted to address, and then kind of strategize what are the best ways to get at that. And so I'm hoping that this could be kind of a discussion, and then kind of identify who might want to do what in terms of moving this forward. But first, just to kind of think about the clean mobility, Scott had a really great, you know, opened the meeting talking about your recent EV, which is
Right.
like, that's great. That's great. Maybe we should talk later about that. We're looking at that. But I will just read, so the things that we had talked about before are, so increased clean mobility opportunities in Carbondale, coordinating with CLEER mobility staff on EV infrastructure and charging planning efforts in Carbondale, leveraging the EV Ready Plan. And the EV Ready Plan was a Garfield County or Garfield, that was Garfield County-wide plan looking at EV readiness that CLEER facilitated. And continues to support the Go EV City resolution, which is a Carbondale-specific resolution for an EV first approach. Evaluate and recommend reductions to carbon emissions for public transit, including the downtowner, thinking about ridership compared to vehicle size, like, you know, i.e. City of Aspen that has a full contract with the downtowner, but they have much smaller, like a little leaf that goes around to pick up people, which is maybe a little more of an appropriate kind of size and emissions to actually the transport. So thinking about that, knowing that the downtowner right now is in a pilot period, which we're aware of. And then evaluating and recommending ways to enforce the town's no idling ordinance. So I guess kind of the question in there is like, what of that do we want to really bite into? And are there questions that would be helpful for us to know to make better decisions? Like having for the EV Ready Plan, like asking Mary from CLEER to really kind of walk us through parts of that plan, or have a subgroup of us really, you know, kind of read through parts of that plan to figure out how we can plug in. So just wanted to kind of open it up to see what the thinking is in terms of how, what are people interested in terms of how the e-board might get at this issue? And Oliver, feel free to jump into, if even not from the e-board standpoint, but just from just from your kind of experience of like on the EV clean mobility side, if there's any ideas there.
What about electrifying the town's fleet? The town vehicles that go around doing work, they don't look electric to me. And of course, the police cars aren't. I think
Fred,
we
I can
can put-
actually, I can speak to that, that is being taken into consideration, and there's conversations, we do have the one Ford Lightning for Public Works. That's being kind of rolled out. I think for utilities, I haven't seen a heavy duty pickup that would meet our needs yet, but that's electric, but we'll keep an eye out on where that goes. And then, you know, we took our first step with hybrids at utilities. I know it's a little ways off. I probably, if I could do it again, I would have pushed for like at least some plug-in hybrids. That would have been nice, but I know other departments are also taking it into consideration. So it's coming. I think for some of the heavier duty work vehicles, we're kind of waiting for the technology to get there to a cost-effective point. You know, Carbondale in general is just not we're not a high revenue town that can be on the leading edge of technology. So we have to be usually a step or two behind as things kind of roll out to make it cost effective. So, but I think it's coming. That's a long answer to be patient.
And I guess a question just there, you know, in terms of Fred bringing that up, is that something, Scott, where you think that's moving and there's a direction like the, you know, the EV city resolution, which is like, look at EV first and see if that can, you know, if that meeting the performance requirements. Is there room, do you think, for the e-board, or are there other aspects related to clean mobility where you think our efforts, you know, might be more well suited? Like, is that the main issue that would be worthwhile for the e-board to be taking on? Or is that kind of moving in a way that maybe there might be some other aspects?
I don't think you have to push on it too hard. I think
Okay.
just
Yeah.
maybe the action item for everybody here would be to keep engaged when something is in the budget for a vehicle replacement and you think that it has value or could be replaced as an EV, push on it with the Board of Trustees and, you know, get with town staff and find out why if it is it not. I know that like the police have concerns about it, just they have a readiness requirement that they're concerned about, but for the rest of town staff, just stay engaged on especially the budget process when stuff is up for replacement.
Mhm.
Other towns have electric police cars. So I know Chief Wilson's not for it, but there are other towns that have them. I think Aspen does.
Mhm.
Other thoughts on the kind of mobility, clean mobility avenues?
I think, you know, the first one you mentioned, the increased clean mobility and then the carbon emissions for public transit. I mean, I think, you know, as the downtowner, if we decide to move forward, it'd be good to look at, because I think the goal in my mind there was to kind of the circulator, you know, that driving the bus around and all the emissions associated with that. If we could get rid of that process and still have public transit for folks that's cleaner. And I feel like we're headed that way, and we're kind of showing that maybe we don't need the circulator with this downtowner. And once it's not a pilot project, you know, maybe we can get into something that a little bit less emissions, whether it's a hybrid or smaller vehicle or whatever. But no, I feel like the CLEER coordination and the EV readiness plan, I feel like there's maybe opportunities for funding and things through that process that we could take advantage of. Because like you mentioned, I think the biggest setback for the town is funding. And so if we could figure out how to help CLEER with grants or whatever to make more money available for that stuff. But no, it does seem like that the town's embracing kind of this electrification process with their equipment and vehicles. And
The only place I've seen hesitation is from the police vehicles.
Yeah.
Every place else is, as soon as there's technology that's ready to make the replacement that is viable.
yeah,
I think it's an easy sell.
yeah, which is awesome.
Mhm.
I think Chief Wilson is also, would like to do police vehicles, but they are really expensive and they have reliability questions still. And they use a lot of electronics in terms of the radios and stuff that drain a battery
Mhm.
even more aggressively than a regular car. So I think he's in the same boat of as if the technology advances and gets more cheap, he's willing to go there. It's just not yet. So.
Mhm. I'm wondering on the downtowner piece. You know, we kind of talked about it last meeting and it was like, hey, has anybody taken it? And like just a few of us had. It does seem like there's also just kind of an awareness aspect of that maybe part of that gets looped into some of the aspects of the kind of communication strategy, or like being kind of thinking from the e-board standpoint, how could the e-board use communications in a way to talk about and promote and also kind of facilitate more of the kind of environmental aspects of some of these things that are already happening. And I'm just thinking about that kind of out loud, Sarah Jane, with you, just in terms of, I mean, do you think that there could be some opportunity within a kind of communications piece to talk about that? And also in some ways to kind of help, you know, help from a public opinion standpoint, like Age Friendly is really, you know, thinking about the benefits of the downtowner kind of to the population that they're really supporting and facilitating, and there can be some real environmental aspects, and maybe there's an avenue to think about that more from the e-board standpoint and, you know, make some recommendations also that might be aimed in more of an environmental direction.
When does the pilot program end for the downtowner?
I think at the,
6 months. It started in July.
yeah, I think it's the end of the year.
End of the year. And
Yeah.
are there like targets that it has to hit? Because it would be kind of cool if we could figure out a awareness strategy
I
that
don't
that
think
helps
there are
it hit
specific
those targets.
I don't think we have specific targets because we don't even know what the baseline is really, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, definitely lobby for it if if you like it. And take it, yeah. I mean, I think it's good to take it and see how it goes.
Maybe this isn't quite my place, but I would suggest for all of you, I have no idea what the reporting and analysis of the success of the pilot test will look like at the end. Maybe everyone take some time and effort digging into those results, seeing how the effectiveness of it, as well as the efficiency for fuel usage, and make sure that it is actually beneficial. I think there's a lot of presumption that it's environmentally beneficial. I'm not sure that it is.
I think in its current state, I don't know that it is either.
Right.
But I think it's kind of a question of, yeah, what are those? And maybe that's kind of an area for the e-board to think about. What would those kind of baseline, what would those kind of performance look like for that, for the e-board to say, yeah, this is something that we really want to get behind. I mean, it does seem like it is hard from a pilot program where there's kind of a balance between the uptake and awareness, and, you know, there's kind of a, is it really as efficient as it could be in the future now? Probably not, but there may be ways to kind of think about what that performance is. So I'm totally with you, and maybe that's some place for us to kind of think about, like, what would be the goals from the e-board standpoint that would be worthwhile to consider to really advocate to move it forward,
Yeah, I would just advocate to dig into the results,
right?
because I'm not sure. I think it's easy for pilot studies, or, you know, I've been involved in projects where we do something like this and there's a presumption of what people want, so you just deliver it. But is that the right choice if no one's digging into the actual results because it's politically viable?
Scott, are they collecting that data?
I have no idea.
Fuel usage?
I have no idea what's being collected. That's why I'm urging you all to dive in, find out what's actually happening. And I'm sure there'll be a wrap-up report of some sort.
Keep in mind that to continue the project comes with a very hefty price tag.
Totally.
And so if you have to decide if you want to electrify the town's fleet or pay for a downtowner. It comes down to that.
Okay, I always hear these rumors that Carbondale is paying RAFTA to run the circulator. Is that true?
No,
Okay.
but it costs RAFTA $1 million roughly a year to run the circulator. I want to say maybe even more north of that. And so
And if
there's some presumption that if we were able to figure out a way to make the circulator redundant, essentially, we could hopefully use some of those funds at least to pay for.
so
downtowner.
is the thought that if the town developed a system that we didn't need a circulator anymore, RAFTA would rebate us?
Yeah, they
essentially?
would. Yeah, they've been putting quite a bit of money into this, like first and last mile mobility.
Yeah.
Stuff. So We Cycle and Downtowner, they're already paying. I think they're paying some of this pilot as well.
Are they?
So.
Yeah, because to me, I seem like we want to provide folks public transit, but we want to try to reduce the carbon footprint of it. We feel like the system we have now, because honestly, the downtowner right now, we're probably increased our carbon footprint because we're still running a circulator and we're running this gas powered van. I think the goal is to try to, yeah.
Was that the objective of the downtowner, to be environmentally friendly?
No, I think there's a lot of, well, Scott, maybe you should answer this question. It seems like,
I know very little. That's why I'm
Yeah.
only urging for y'all to dive into it, because I
My-
know just enough to ask questions.
yeah, my understanding was they were just trying to increase the reach of, you know, vehicle transportation for folks, because the circulator is pretty limited, you know, in town, and folks, were only using it for certain times of the year. And then you'd see the bus, and everybody's kind of perception is, oh, you see this bus driver around town with nobody in it, sort of thing. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think environmental stuff was an important goal in it, but I think the number one thing is just accessibility and, particularly for seniors, being able to go to the grocery store or whatever, if you can't ride a bike or whatever, or go to the bus, so.
And the nice thing is, like, I think it's, in my mind, it's easier to replace, like the downtown, it's easier to electrify that, like a smaller vehicle than it is like a bus, and it's kind of the way I look at it.
Although RAFTA I think they won a big grant for 6 or 7 more electric
Oh,
buses.
did they? Very cool.
And they're gonna build a whole station in Glenwood around it. So I think they're gonna be electrified after some point, so, I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. What they told us was it was gonna be 10 more electric buses, and the new charging station at the West Glenwood Park and Ride.
Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about like having these big vans driving around and there's 2 of them and they're, idling outside my house and I, know, like that doesn't seem like a great option from an environmental standpoint. But the idea of having a smaller, like some of their other applications, like a smaller Nissan Leaf that's kind of driving around because it's mostly just using just a ride share for 1 to 2 people at a time. Like that seems to me like a better, like kind of calibrating it based on the size and calibrating it based on the kind of environmental aspects. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like it seems like an area that would be worth the e-board weighing into because it is some of those priorities and kind of trade-offs that would be helpful for us to be able to, kind of advocate for what aspects we, think might be wanting to support. But it sounds like once that happens in December, or I guess Chris, maybe just keep us looped into
Yeah,
when
I'll
the
try to
right
keep
time
you- I
is, but
assume that
sounds
they'll
like there's
come-
interest to.
I think they'll probably come to the board as we have discussions over budget for next year. And I assume we'll get a report before the budget season
Mhm.
ends, so that we can decide if we're gonna put a whole bunch of money into this for a whole year.
Yeah.
And so I'll try to forward any email when I figure out that's on the agenda. You guys can.
That
come
would
to
be
meeting.
great. And then kind of same kind of going back. I mean, I think you being a privy to this discussion be helpful to just know some of the questions that we're asking and
Yeah.
what we're kind of interested in. So as that does come into the budget or some of
Mhm.
the discussion, be great if you could, just kind of ask some of those questions or see what data we may be getting so that we can.
I think the fuel use thing is an interesting question. I sort of doubt I don't know, but I bet they could reverse engineer that to some degree based on mileage or something. But I definitely, when we did this pilot, I was pretty adamant with Lauren, and I think the trustees all agree that it is a pilot and it's supposed to be gathering information, and that was a key directive to the
Yeah.
contractor, is to gather as much different kinds of data as you can
Yeah.
about this through
Yeah.
this pilot process, so that we do have information.
And it'd be interesting to like correlate that with circulator information, have they seen a drop in ridership because of that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Yeah.
And then
maybe
does
I'll-
the circulator, when y'all renew that every year, do they give you stats on number of people riding?
They do that without our input. That's
Mm.
basically entirely in RAFTA's wheelhouse.
But I know they collect.
Okay.
ridership.
They
But
collect
yes, they
ridership
collect it.
details, and it
Yeah.
does actually carry more people than you think. I think the biggest trick with the like leaf style thing is that the circulator doesn't get much use, like whatever, 8 hours a day or whatever, but there's the half hour when everybody comes to the park and ride
Mhm.
at the end of the day, and that thing is full suddenly. And so then suddenly you do have, how are you gonna transport 25 people at once?
Mhm.
So that's sort of the question. But that's a good point they'll try to remember to ask Lauren about that, if she can get that info from RAFTA simultaneously and see if it's gone down or,
Mhm.
what it is and to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, and even how, I mean, I've gotten off at the park and ride and seen a whole busload of people get off and then the downtowner come and pick up 2 people. And it just seems like there's probably a better way to have multiple, like that doesn't, it should be kind of more of a carpool style than just like on demand for me because I called it at the right time. I get it. Like it just seems like from there's got to be some ways from a function standpoint for that to work a little bit more smoothly if it is really intended to replace the circulator.
I've been curious about that too. I wonder if there is some sort of hybrid version of it where it sort of has a set route of some kind that it follows, that you could go and stand at a stop for it. But if you had special needs, you could call it to your door or whatever, but it might follow like a semi-set route that maybe acts more like a bus, but I'm not sure if that would be effective or not. But
Or that
I
it's
know in
just
South
always gonna
America,
be like,
collectivos are like a thing everywhere. Like,
totally, right. Or that it's always at the bus, like it, they plan to go to the bus stop at a certain time or.
yeah.
Have there ever been talks about expanding the reach of the circulator farther into town? Because I feel like the reason why it has such low ridership is that it doesn't go past Main Street. And if there's talks about just making a set route for the downtowner, and if RAFTA's investing in electric buses, then is there a possibility of redrawing the circulator route in order to serve the majority of the town? Because I think that it really doesn't, the reach of it isn't really worth it for how many times it goes around.
Oliver, when I first joined this board, that was my first cause, expand the circulator route. I was told it would cost too much money and all kinds of, RAFTA doesn't have these staff to cover it. But if we're gonna continue to rely on them, they've got to go to RVR and South Carbondale. They can't just go down Main Street. That's not covering the needs at all. So it has been brought up.
Yeah, the arguments against it have mostly just been that there's like, it's about like how much time are people willing to wait at the stop and not making that too long of a wait or too long of a drive to the park and ride, but also being able to do it with one driver on one bus. And if you try to make it bigger, you might want two buses to have the lead time cut down so that you're not waiting forever for your bus to get through all the other neighborhoods in town. So I think it's all on the table at this point, and I think the downtowner has shaken the conversation up in a good way, so.
Though I assume the WeCycle is gonna get renewed.
Yeah, the
Seems like
WeCycle's
it's been a
been
huge
really
success.
popular.
Yeah.
So definitely we'll keep focused on the downtowner piece. Anything else, any other aspects in here from a clean mobility standpoint? Examples include like last year, we supported CLEER's ride and drive event. That was one thing that the e-board decided to do from a clean mobility front. The year before, we got the Go EV City resolution passed through town. Are there any other kind of areas that we feel like are really pertinent from a clean mobility side that we wanted to kind of take on?
I feel like when Fred mentions this as the charging, network here in town, just like taking a better look at that and getting a plan together. And I feel like CLEER is a good person to work with on.
And
that
they
stuff.
I don't know if you guys heard about this, but I think it was either CLEER or GCE, maybe it was GCE, is applying for a grant that's a Garfield County wide thing for, I want to say 7 or 8 high-powered chargers or whatever. And I think one of them is aimed for Carbondale. And I think the initial thought was that that's going to go out at Cowan Drive next to the other one. I was pushing for them to try to figure out if they could do one downtown.
I agree.
I do think that would be a huge thing for the business community too, to get the fast charging stations in the place where the businesses are. So, because you have to do something anyway, you might as well be downtown. Where
Exactly. I agree.
But
And Chris,
there's so many
yeah.
more infrastructure questions, I think, about does the power supply right for that location or whatever, so. And whose territory is it? Is it Holy Cross?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we did sign on in support of that grant. And yeah, the scope for Carbondale was just one. But yeah, I mean, I guess that the thinking, Quinn, when you're thinking about that, is that from the e-board standpoint, is that identifying funding for charging stations in Carbondale? Or, I mean, maybe that's something we just need to chew on, but I guess
Yeah.
I'm like, where do you kind of see that?
It seems like having a plan, might be a first step. Maybe we already.
Like
maybe they already-
Carbondale having a plan.
Yeah, like, okay,
Specific to.
yeah, we'd like chargers here and kind of, like what Fred's been pushing on. And then from there, I always feel like, at least from my perspective on the river stuff, having a plan together always helps with the grant process, because you say, hey, I'm gonna meet this plan we put together, we've thought through this and, but. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was gonna reach out to Mary and just because I've kind of run out of things on the clean mobility stuff to work on. So I was gonna go chat with her and see what I could peel off and help out with.
Yeah, it might be useful to try to do some sort of assessment of like our electrical. Where does it make sense in town based on where power is or.
Right. Yeah, because like the high power charging, they need like 3-phase, whatever, and I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions out there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, I remember Pat talking about some charging stations that had their own battery included or whatever that might be able to up
Yeah,
charge to a higher level, but I don't know what the story is with those
I
either.
know I got on Tesla's website, and you basically you can apply for them to put a station in, because they own it and run it.
Hmm.
I don't know how convincing that would be, but something along those lines.
Yeah.
Well, maybe an action there, Quinn, if you connect with Mary, would then just to kind of bring back, like, what are kind of the opportunities for the e-board to get involved with that discussion? Is that through plan? Is that through funding? What would that look like?
Okay.
But that would be great.
No, because I do feel like, I kind of said this already, I do feel like there's a lot of things moving forward in different areas that we cycle and the town embracing all that stuff. So I feel like just kind of keeping that ball rolling.
Yeah. Anybody, Morgan, any thoughts? Clean mobility, Kevin, Oliver, Jane? Any thoughts from that, like specifically? Or generally kind of agreement with what we've been talking about?
I think general agreement from my side. I do find the circulator and the ride share really interesting, the downtowner. So if we decide we want to look into that, that would be super interesting.
Great. General agreement. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks. That's great. So we will, so on that first one, so Quinn, thanks for kind of connecting with Mary. Let us know what comes out of that. In terms of the downtowner, we will kind of take a look and see how that shakes out once that pilot period is over, and figure out kind of what our approach is then.
And Hannah, is it worth checking in to see if the data is being collected? And maybe if it's not, we still have a couple months left on the program.
Probably. Who would be the person to, like,
know.
who's the
On the
Downtowner.
the downtowner, like on fuel stuff.
Or just in general, like data, what data they're collecting and.
I mean, I can talk to Lauren about it. I don't know if she gave them specific categories of things to collect data on, or if they know that, or how much of it can be found out in it after the fact.
Maybe if you have time to check in.
Yeah, I'll try to remember to.
Let's say I feel like as it gets colder, maybe the ridership will go up a little bit.
Yeah. It does seem like a winter time, especially valuable at that time.
Yeah. Okay, well, that sounds good. Thanks for kind of diving into that. Anything else any other kind of brainstorming, or any other items that anybody wants to kind of move? Yeah, Fred.
I got some information I'd like to pass along. I found out that the city of Boulder has it in their building codes that all new construction of single-family homes must have EV chargers. And multifamily homes, they have an EV charger for every 10 units. Now, this goes along with my my wish for a no gas in new construction wish. But I know what Mayor Ben would, he'd say, why should we take your know-nothing advice about this when we have hired consultants that, you know, are experts in these fields? Well, I say we're the representatives of the city, of the citizens, and we should be making input into building code decisions. And I think this would be a good one. And that's just handing that out there, and let you know I'll be bringing that up occasionally. Thank you.
Do new homes actually have to have a charging unit or just the 240 accessible in the garage?
I don't know if it's 240 or 120, but they do have to have a charging unit.
Yeah, and the state solar ready and electric EV ready codes have certain requirements. Sounds like Boulder maybe has gone a little bit beyond that. But the state's codes, when you open your code, you need to kind of make these additional adjustments, do have, like, you gotta have 240 in certain locations, and you've got to be able to kind of identify that you can do that transition, whether that's through an appliance or an opportunity for a charging in garage. Yeah, so a lot of that is coming down kind of from a state standpoint, and then local jurisdictions can decide if they want to go further than that. Yeah.
I believe 240 is already required here in the garage.
I'm not, I
could be wrong, but we got a townhouse that's new.
and it has
And
that.
they told us it had to have it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure the specifics there, but
I think like
that's great. It's got it.
fryers require it. I know the water heater doesn't require it.
Yeah,
I think most boxes have it.
yeah. And that's kind of where a lot of it just kind of from an industry standpoint and from a code update standpoint, it's kind of moving, and like that's kind of the direction that it's all kind of, you know, moving. But yeah, and I think there may be an energy code conversation, building an energy code conversation happening tomorrow, maybe with the trustees,
I think so.
which is moving forward with the Jeff Dickinson moving forward with the energy and building code updates. So that, Fred, would be an opportunity if you want to just tune into that or see what that conversation is.
That's tomorrow, the trustee.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, 6:30 roughly.
Yeah, tomorrow evening.
Yeah, I have other plans.
It's hard to keep track of everything, but
Yeah, that's true.
okay, well, thanks for kind of diving into that. I think that my thought is then next month, kind of we can get updates on some of these different aspects if people want to bring anything back, and then think more, go to that next, think more about the water conservation piece and kind of dive into that and see where, you know, kind of where our interests are and what we want to move forward. So that's how I'm thinking that we structure these meetings, just kind of do the updates and then kind of take a deeper dive from a topic standpoint and then figure out how we want to move that forward. And certainly if anything else feels pertinent or we want to, you know, talk about, let's add it to the agenda and do it. Okay. I'm gonna move out of the clean mobility to 8.5 membership update. So I guess this says Kevin Hanian moved to regular member. I don't know if that's a question mark or if that's we have Kevin, you've been an alternate member and we have a full member spot. So seems like it would make sense for you to move into the full member spot to be able to be a voting member and then to help us when we have someone's not there to have a quorum to be able to make a decision. Does that jive with you?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. It says moved and I just wanted to make sure that was like consensual action. Great.
This is for some anyways.
You need a motion.
It says moved, but we do need to make a motion too. Okay, great.
I'll make a motion to move Kevin to a regular member
Quinn's make a
status.
motion. I will second the motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Great. Thanks for that clarification. Anything else? And Oliver, any questions that you have? And we could, chat afterward, and does anybody have anything else for the meeting, or shall we adjourn? I know, and we're moving toward the date, yeah.
Only for the next
Lots of
6
dealing.
months.
Right. Right, it looks like it's not raining though, so. I will say actually one other thing, I forgot to mention this, I'm not able to be at next month's meeting, which is in the October meeting. And if someone else is able to chair that meeting, that would be great, and I can help with the agenda or getting information to Kay, but is Quinn, are you able to do that? Quinn is officially the vice chair, so that would be awesome. Okay. I will move to adjourn the meeting. Anyone else want to participate in that? Second? Kevin seconds. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question before we go?
Yes.
Is the next one on October 14th?
The third Monday in October. I
Oh,
don't
so
have
it'll
my
be the 21st, because the 1st is on a Tuesday. This is a confusing month.
It will be on the 21st.
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 Okay, great. I will also not be in that meeting, but I will follow up via email and remind everyone.
Great. Super. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, y'all.
See you soon.